Hey, Jonathan here. In this video, I wanted to show a couple of new libraries that I am working with. So the two main ones here are, first of all, Gmail R, and this is basically used to remote access Gmail from within R. In this case, I'm going to show you how to download a whole bunch of emails and do some analysis on them. So I'm doing some analysis on actually some marketing emails. So we'll go over that in a sec. And the second one down here is pretty cool, Exquisite. And this was actually mentioned to me by one of my students, Juan, who mentioned this as a kind of like Tableau interface to R to be able to automatically generate visualizations for you and automatically generate the code for you in ggplot, which is actually really, really cool. So this particular piece of code is maybe not necessarily the best example for that, but I chucked it in here anyway, and I'll probably do another review, I guess, on this again in the future because I think it's actually a really pretty cool library. If you're new to this channel and you're keen to learn the latest tips, tricks, and tools for working more effectively with data, please hit the subscribe button for weekly videos. Now, first up here, let's actually load these up. Tidyverse always gets loaded all the time anyway, and Lubridate is actually another Tidyverse library which doesn't get loaded into Tidyverse by default, but is actually technically one of the Tidyverse libraries. So Lubridate is basically used for date manipulation. So we've got the dates and time that we will extract from our emails, and then we will convert it into a date time format, and that comes from the Lubridate library. Okay, so this function here, messages, is basically going to do a search against my emails. So it will need to authenticate and everything first, and then it's going to do this search query from @helloteachable.com. And Teachable, by the way, is a learning management system which I host my site datastrategywithjonathan.com on. And so this is where I host some of my courses which you can get access to. So there we go. And so what that's done is it's gone off and downloaded all of these emails like so. And basically what the idea of this is that I'm trying to do some analysis on how different companies and organizations actually do their email marketing campaigns, email marketing strategies. So I've downloaded all the emails from them. And you'll notice here that this comes in this kind of format: message ID, thread ID. And what you'll notice about here as well, this is not very readable to start with. You've just got IDs. You don't actually have actual data. To extract the actual message themselves, we're going to use this other function called called message, right? So we've used messages to extract a whole bunch of messages, which then returns their IDs. And then we're going to use the function message to extract the single message for each of these. But to do this, we're going to have to do a few different steps. Now, first of all, I mean, this kind of looks like it's a data frame, but unfortunately it's not. If I ran this through as, say, data frame, message IDs, right? Then you'll get this error message here basically saying cannot class a Gmail message to a data frame, right? So basically this is a class, or basically this data here is of the type Gmail messages, and that can't be converted to a data frame. If anything, it's a little bit more similar to a list, right? So this here is basically taking this piece of data, extracting the first element out of it, And if we take a look at that, we can see we can have a bit of a peep inside, and you can see that this starts to look a little bit more like a list format. And if I go into this first object here, messages, then I'm basically going another layer down. I'm going to do a modified depth. Now, one of the things is with a lot of the data that you get these days from the web and different databases like MongoDB, which are document databases, as opposed to the more kind of traditional SQL relational databases, which are all in tables. Everything comes in more of a kind of hierarchy and a tree structure. This is also very common for working with a lot of web data, which comes in JSON format. And all of this data is, it's actually quite different to work with. I'm actually helping a friend at the moment, seeing he's building an auction site, and he's using MongoDB in the background, and all the data exports to a JSON format. And the nice thing about this format is that it's very flexible in terms of being able to kind of dynamically update the schema as you go along. And so it's a lot less rigid, which makes it very easily to adapt and change. But from a data analyst point of view, what we really want to do is get things back into a table format. We want to get things back into a data frame. And so JSON format, I find, is kind of actually tends to be pretty unfriendly, actually. Now, these formats like JSON and MongoDB formats and things like XML, those kind of things, all these things which have these tree type of structures, they will actually convert to list objects inside of R. And when they do that, we can kind of manipulate it from that point. But the problem is that they usually end up in kind of very nested lists, right? So lists with lists, like lists within lists within lists, which is also, again, not the friendliest thing to convert back into a data frame format. So anyway, basically the idea of this code here is that we are going to unpack this list and kind of try and flatten it out a bit. So we're kind of peeping inside to the messages object. And what I'm doing is I'm extracting the IDs here. Right, so I extracted the IDs. And then what I want to do is I want to flatten that down into a vector. So now I've just got all of these items here. So now I have a vector with all of the email IDs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the map function to go off and basically pull down the entire message for each of these IDs and save all of them into my messages. So that's what this entire chunk here is. So I'm going to run all of that. Control Enter to send all that into the console, and this is going away. This is taking a little while to download all of these messages. That's done now. This line here, by the way, write RDS. This is a little bit like write CSV, but RDS is actually saving it as a R data format, as opposed to just a sort of open text format. And the benefit of this is that you can basically save more complex object types. The other benefits to this is that it has all the column specifications built into this as well. So a CSV won't have the column specifications, but this will. So that's another bonus there. The data will generally load faster, and you can also add compression to this as well, which means the file sizes can be much, much smaller, maybe like 40 times smaller. So they can be a lot smaller when you are using this function here. Okay, so I've already done that before, so I'm not going to do that now. Now, my messages. The reason I put this line here is I just wanted to show and demonstrate a few things here. So the first message I have in here is basically this email here. You can see here it's got a bit of text in it. A lot of these are tracker links in here. So this is extracting the message with all the components of it. If I use that, it extracts just the body. Now, before I go unlist, I just want to show you why I'm doing this. So if I run the class on this here, you can see that this actually returns a list instead of characters. So I want to say actually convert this into a character vector so that I can do some analysis on that. So I'm going to change this to unlist, right? And then if I run, say, class of that, you can see that now it's unpacked it into a character vector. Okay, so that's kind of basically what I was using to figure out how to make some of this work here. What am I doing here anyway? So a table is a data frame, so this is basically a table. Inside this table, I'm going to retain my ID. So my ID is equal to, well, the ID function comes from the Gmail package. So that's what all of these are doing, and we're using our map function to basically apply this function to every single one of the messages, right? So it does a lot of kind of repetition for us effectively. So we're doing this for the ID, we're doing the same thing for the subject. So here, what we're doing is we are using it to get the date. Now, because date is a slightly more generic function name, right? So date, there's a date function inside Gmail R. There's also a date function within LubriDate. And so I need to be a little bit more explicit about which date function I'm actually using, which is why I put that in front of there. So this returns a character, and then this part here says take those dates, which are currently just characters, and actually convert it into a date time object. So that's basically what that's doing there. Okay, this next bit here, body length. So this is going my messages, and instead of turning a character, we want to return the length, which is a number. So I'm using the map int function to return a number. I'm using the body function, and notice here that this is a little bit different. So this is something I go over in my course as well, but this is basically what's known as an anonymous function. It's passing in the values into here, and we are unlisting them, which is basically what we did here, which converts into a character vector. And then we are getting the length of that string in there. And then I'm just getting who the emails, what the email address that this came from. Okay, so all the different components up there. So I am going to run that. Okay. Then if I take a look at this, we can take a look at what that data looks like. Okay, did I get some error message here? Let me clear that out. Try this again. Okay, error in sort, NA loss decreasing, X must be atomic, ID is deprecated. Okay, just in case there's another function called ID, let's just copy and paste this up here. Let's run this again. All right, there we go. Okay, so here we have a table, we've got our ID, we've got the subject name. These two actually look like they're the same. It's interesting actually. Let's make this a little bit wider. Let's rerun that. Okay, so this is both the February newsletter, and these are sent on the same day. So I actually looked at this before, and this is quite interesting actually. So I'm actually signed up to this newsletter under two different email addresses, and this is interesting because you can see different email sequences. Now you'll notice over here that I've got the body length, and the body length of these two emails is actually quite different, right? Now sometimes there's a little bit of variance between some of these anyway, like for instance this here and this here, even though these numbers are slightly different. Sometimes that's just the difference between a slightly different email address in there. So that's not really too big a difference here. This up the top though, that's actually quite a big difference. And what this is here actually is, I think they're actually doing some A/B testing or some split testing, right? So this is where they send two variants of an email out sort of randomly, and then from there decide which one should actually get sent. So that's some A/B split testing, and this is why I seem to have gotten two variants of an email here. So pretty interesting. There you go. Okay, so now that I have this in this data here, we've got this as a date time object. Let's use this cool new package here, Exquisite, to take a look at it. So basically what this does is it actually opens up a kind of shiny app here where you can basically drag and drop. So I've got all the different features across the top here. So we've got our date, and we could do that, say drag date in here, and it automatically visualizes it. It actually automatically picks a suitable visualization for you. So we can see that we had a lot of activity around December here, and then it kind of died off a little bit, and then a little bit around January, and then kind of went quiet again there. So we could do a few things here. Okay, we can adjust the different ranges. We can okay, so this is a histogram, so we can set the number of bins. So this is kind of grouped a few things together. Let's increase that, so then we can actually see okay, it's actually clustering on kind of specific days, right? So, you know, pretty interesting. And you notice here that sometimes I have two emails. In fact, a lot of times I've got multiples of two because I'm signed up with two different email addresses. But sometimes I only have one, so that's kind of interesting as well. So, okay, let's try something else like body length. Okay, so here you can see most of the emails have approximately this many characters in them. A few more with this, and you know, this is a bit of an anomaly out here as an extra long email outside here. We've got a whole bunch of different visualizations. I'm not too sure that how many of these will actually work with this particular data, but there, yeah, we have a density. Yep, box plot. All right, so after you actually have your visualization here, you can actually hit the export code button, and you can actually export these as images to PNG or PowerPoint, or you got the code right here, which you can copy to clipboard or insert code into script. So let's do that there. We close this down, and we can see we've got the code right here. So if I run this as well, you can make a few modifications in the code. And here it is in our plot area. So this is a really cool way actually of learning up ggplot. Just get Exquisite to set up all the base code for you, and then just make a few modifications from there. So anyway, some pretty cool stuff. A few things that actually make life a lot easier, like Exquisite, where you get assistance to write code. Some cool new libraries like Gmail, which is kind of cool because you can control Gmail, but needs a little bit of work just because it comes in kind of web-based formats like JSON. But you know, these are the kind of things that you need to sometimes deal with. Like I mentioned, these days there's a lot of web data. It's coming in JSON format. Databases like MongoDB, where they have tree structures instead of table structures, and learning how to deal with those effectively is, you know, kind of a useful thing to be able to do. So now this code here, probably needs a little bit more background to be able to like really understand this. But this is kind of one of the courses I'm working on at the moment to basically depict. This is basically using the map function. We can see that the map function, we've used it here, all throughout this whole piece of code to basically iterate over this and unpack it all. So understanding how to use these functions and exactly how these work and understanding lists and all that sort of thing is, generally a really good general fundamental R skill to have. So anyway, if you are interested in learning more about that, please head over to my website, www.datastrategywithjonathan.com. You can download a free sample course. There will be an offer coming out on my course where I'm teaching all the map functions and all the things related to that sometime soon. So do sign up to get notified of when that occurs. And if you found this video helpful, please leave a thumbs up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.